On January 26, 2001, Gujarat, India was struck with one of the worst earthquakes in history, lasting over 2 minutes and its effects reaching Pakistan. The earthquake was 7.7 magnitude, and it's estimated to have killed between 13,805 and 20,023 people, injuring 167,000 more. Nearly 400,000 homes were destroyed during these 2 minutes.
On November 12, 2001, a regular scheduled international passenger flight from New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport to the International Airport in Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. Flight 587, flying the route, crashed into the Bell Harbor neighborhood of Queens shortly after takeoff. All 260 people aboard the plane, 251 passengers and 9 crew members were killed, along with 1 dog carried in the cargo hold. 5 people and 1 dog were also killed on the ground due to the collision. It is recorded as the second deadliest aviation incident to ever occur on U.S. soil. The location of the accident and the fact that it took place 2 months and 1 day after the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center initially spawned fears of another terrorist attack. Terrorism was officially ruled out as the cause by the National Transportation Safety Board, which instead attributed the disaster to the first officer's overuse of rudder controls in response to wake turbulence, or jet wash, from a Japanese airplane that took off minutes before it. According to the NTSB, the aggressive use of rudder controls by the co-pilot caused the vertical stabilizers to snap off the plane, along with the plane's 2 engines separating from the intense force before impact.
Take a look into what the U.S. Department of Justice has called, quote, possibly the worst intelligence disaster in U.S. history.
Robert Hanssen was a former FBI agent who spied for Soviet and Russian intelligences against the United States for 22 years, from 1979 to 2001. Hanssen was arrested on February 18, 2001, at Foxstone Park near his home in Vienna, Virginia, and was charged with selling U.S. secrets to the Soviet Union and subsequently the Russian Federation for more than $1.4 million in cash and diamonds over a 22-year period. On July 6, 2001, to avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty to 14 counts of espionage and 1 of conspiracy to commit espionage in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. He was sentenced to 15 life terms without the possibility of parole. On September 11, 2001, the terrorist group known as Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 U.S. airplanes with the intent to target the 3 most valuable parts of the Western influence. The 2 World Trade Center buildings, the Pentagon and the White House, were all targets. At 8:46 a.m., the first World Trade Center building was hit between floors 93 and 99. The second World Trade Center building was hit at 9:03 a.m. between floors 77 and 85. Both buildings eventually collapsed within 1 hour and 42 minutes after impact. The plane on its way to the White House was repossessed by crew and passengers and eventually crashed in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. with no survivors. The airplane that crashed into the Pentagon hit at 9:37 a.m. and caused severe damage and injuries. In a total of all 4 crashes, almost 3,000 people died with over 6,000 people injured. It also caused over $10 billion in infrastructure damage and also left a giant scar over American hearts and birthed a hatred and prejudice against Muslims and anyone from Middle Eastern descent for years to come. But it also left Americans missing something. They wanted revenge for what happened to them, and any actions against the Middle East were heavily supported by the general public.
Today, I have given formal notice to Russia, in accordance with the treaty, that the United States of America is withdrawing from this almost 30-year-old treaty. I have concluded the ABM treaty hinders our government's ability to develop ways to protect our people from future terrorists or rogue state missile attacks.
In December 2001, the U.S. withdrew from the 1972 missile treaty with the former USSR and current Russia. The U.S. withdrawal led to the creation of the American Missile Defense Agency and an advancement in the U.S.'s defensive mechanisms. However, it also had many critics who claimed that it would increase tensions with Russia and would lead to a world without effective legal constraints on nuclear proliferation.
Cool Color Sun Squad! New groovy grape foam, berry blue, and bubblegum!
Help! Bobby needs sunblock!
Try Sunblock that's Fun Block.
Cool colors!
Cool smells! Way cool!
Banana boat!
Cool colors! back, everybody. It certainly has been a tough day and days for all of us at NBC News because, of course, the press conference that announced yesterday that an NBC News staff member actually had been tested positive for anthrax.
Starting only 1 week after 9/11 and taking the course of several weeks, letters were mailed to several news media offices and 2 Democratic U.S. senators containing anthrax spores, an extremely deadly bacteria with a mortality rate of 50 to 80% after being inhaled. 5 people died and 17 others were infected as well. America had barely begun recovering from 9/11 at the time of these attacks, and fears that the attacks sprouted from the Middle East arose. However, it was an American scientist who committed this attack. From broad concern felt among Americans from both the September 11th attacks and 2001 anthrax attacks, Congress rushed to pass legislation to strengthen security controls. Due to the fear felt across American citizens and the paranoia similar to that in regard to suspected communists in the Cold War, the act was passed in Senate with almost full support with the exception of 1 vote against it. Many citizens thought the act was a necessary measure to make America safe, but over time, the public realized that the extent of the act was a breach of their private lives and support dwindled.